Welcome to the Explainer. Ever wonder what really happens when you create a variable in Python? Today we're pulling back the curtain and following a variable's life, from the moment it's born all the way to its legacy.
So here's the roadmap. We're going to follow a variable's entire life cycle through these 6 key stages to really get what's happening under the hood. All right, let's dive right in with a variable's birth.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Assignment. This is the exact moment a variable springs into existence, and it's really where the whole story of memory in Python kicks off.
I mean, look at this. X equals 10. You've probably typed a line of code just like this 1,000 times. It seems so simple, you know, but there is so much more going on here than you might think.
So, let's really think about it. When Python executed that line, what did it actually do? Did it grab a little box from your computer's memory, slap a label X on it, and then stuff the number 10 inside? Well, not quite.
The textbook definition is, a bit dry. An abstract storage location. Yawn. In Python, it's way more helpful to forget the box idea entirely. Instead, think of a variable as just a label, a name tag.
And this is probably the best way to picture it, the name tag and locker analogy. Your variable, X, isn't the locker itself. It's just the name tag you stick on it. The locker is the actual location in your computer's memory.
And this is the absolute key. X does not contain the number 10. It just holds the address, a reference to where the number 10 is actually living in memory. It's a pointer. And this single idea that names point to values is fundamental. It leads us straight into our next topic.
Right, so if variables are just names pointing to objects, what happens if we stick multiple names onto the same object? This is where we get into a really important and sometimes kind of tricky concept called aliasing. Okay, check this out. We assign the string hello to the variable s. Easy enough. Then we just say t equals s. So the big question is, did we just make a brand new copy of hello for t?
Are these two totally separate variables now, each with their own identical value? Or is something a little more clever happening here?
And the answer is no! Python is efficient. It's not going to waste time in memory creating a whole new hello object. Instead, it just grabs a new name tag, t, and slaps it onto the exact same memory locker that s is already on.
And that, my friends, is aliasing. 2 or more names all referring to the very same object. Now, this becomes absolutely critical when that object itself can change.
So, that brings us to the next big question. Can the thing inside that locker actually be changed? Well, it all depends on whether its data type is mutable or immutable.
This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, with a list, we can reach right in and change an element directly. No problem. That's because lists are mutable. But look at the string on the right. Try to change just one character, and bam, Python throws a type error. Strings are immutable. You can't change them in place.
This table is a super handy cheat sheet. On the left, you've got your changeable, mutable types, like lists and dictionaries. And on the right, your unchangeable, immutable ones, like tuples and strings. Trust me, knowing this distinction is key to dodging some really weird and unexpected bugs, especially when aliasing is in play.
Next up, we've got to talk about where our variable lives and who can see it. This is all determined by something called its scope.
Basically, a variable's scope is just the part of your code where its name actually means something, where it's visible. The 2 most common types you'll deal with all the time are local and global.
Think of it this way. A local variable is born inside a function, and it dies inside that function. Its existence is a secret kept within those walls. A global variable, on the other hand, lives out in the open for the entire program's execution and can be seen from almost anywhere. Okay, so we've established that assignment just creates another name tag. So how do we create a true independent copy of a more complex object, like a list?
Well, first up, there's the shallow copy. This creates a new locker with shelves, if you will, but it fills those shelves with pointers that lead back to the original items.
So what does this mean? It means if you have a list that's nested inside your copied list and you change it, you've just changed the original one too. That's because both your original and your copy are pointing to the very same nested list object. It can get pretty confusing. To really truly prevent this, you need a deep copy. A deep copy is way more thorough. It doesn't just copy the outer container. It goes through every single item inside and makes a fresh copy of it. And if those items are containers, it copies their contents too, all the way down. The end result is a completely new, totally independent object.
So we've followed this whole life cycle. But why? Why does understanding this whole model of memory and references and scope actually matter for your day-to-day coding?
Because it helps you write code that's more predictable, more efficient, and just plain better. The next time you pass a list to a function and it gets changed when you didn't expect it to, you'll know why. Aliasing and mutability. You'll know exactly when you need a deep copy instead of a shallow one. It's about moving from just writing code that works to truly understanding why it works.
When you think about these mechanics, it helps demystify the language. All that stuff that feels like magic suddenly turns into pure logic. It empowers you to be a more confident, more effective programmer. So the next time you write a simple line like x equals 10, you'll know all about the secret life that just began.